This is the Laura Coates Show, your wake-up call for news and politics from Washington, D.C. Here's your host, Laura Coates.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Laura Coates Show. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here today with me. We got a lot more to talk about today, including what's been happening at the border. The end of Title 42, of course, happened on Friday. Title 8 naturally kicks in. That was decades old, and of course, it's always been in existence for the purposes of thinking about border control. But there's a lot to unpack, particularly as we learned just yesterday from Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who talked about the reduction by about 50% of what they expected to happen in the influx of migrants over the border. Now, Title 8, of course, is this decades-old immigration legislation. It outlines processes for handling migrants at the border. And while that section of the code dictates, expedited deportation protocols, it typically allows more time for migrants to lodge asylum claims than what they were afforded under Title 42. Joining us now to unpack what's happening at the border is Texas immigration attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. She's the owner and CEO of Lincoln-Goldfinch Law in Austin and the co-host of Law Moms Out Loud, a podcast and YouTube page devoted to helping female lawyers who want to have a successful career and home life. She tweets at Lincoln G. Finch. Welcome to the program. How are you, Kate? Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm good today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're here with us today. Listen, when it comes to the end of Title 42, we're hearing, of course, here in Washington, D.C., as others are across the nation, about the influx of migrants, what's at stake, what's ahead. But in terms of what it's like for an immigration attorney, in terms of figuring out what happens next, can you give us the lowdown?
Sure. I mean, as an immigration attorney, I've been doing this for 15 years in Texas, and so we're used to this, which is changing, shifting winds and policies along the border. And this is just another version of that, with Title 42 expiring and 3 years worth of hopeful asylum seekers at the border. Not all, at the border, but we've had the border closed for 3 years. Now we're entering into an era where Biden has rolled out a new policy that will attempt to limit asylum eligibility to migrants, but it's likely to be challenged in federal court because many of its provisions are contrary to the asylum laws we have in place. So what we're likely to see is a continuation of shifting winds and policies along the border, which leads to more confusion, not only for ourselves, but for the migrants. And it's an unfortunate circumstance.
Talk to me about those contradictions with asylum law. I don't know that people have a good understanding of why it's being challenged.
Sure. So we started offering asylum after World War II, when there was, an international failure to protect Jewish refugees in the U.S., among many other nations. Said, you know what, we are going to protect refugees who are fleeing persecution, and this is what a refugee is, and this is what asylum is, and it requires that someone be at the border, be in the United States. It doesn't matter if they traveled through other countries or how they entered the country. That's been in our laws for 70 years. And some of the provisions that Biden is rolling out are, for example, if you don't register through the CBP One app that we've created that is rife with problems, then, and you enter the country and you're apprehended, we're going to deport you and subject you to a 5-year ban. So that is one situation, is the manner of entry. Another example would be telling everyone who is essentially non-Mexican that they must apply for asylum through the countries that they travel, which for many of them is not safe, and also many of these countries don't offer the same protections that we do, so it's unrealistic. So those would be two major points of issue with the new Biden border policy.
The numbers that Secretary Mayorkas mentioned, this sort of 50% reduction in what they anticipated, does that surprise you? Should we be reading anything into that? It seems like it's very early to assess what the true impact has been in terms of the numbers because, it just expired on Friday. Everyone wants to have statistics almost immediately. But realistically, what does that tell you?
You know what's interesting? I think what we're seeing, which is surprising people, I've been noticing it in a lot of the media stories, is is the orderliness that we're seeing along these border towns and cities. So where migrants are congregating or living in tent camps, there's not this overwhelming surge of people just running across the border as where lots of people fear. These are migrants, you know, who, keeping in mind who these people are. These are people who have fled Venezuela, they've fled Cuba, they've fled danger. They're here maybe with their families, and they're hoping to finally have the opportunity to apply for asylum legally, which they haven't had access to for 3 years. So what we are seeing is people, you know, lining up at the bridge to be able to apply if they're having trouble with the CBP-1 app, you know, accessing any services that are available to them. So I think it's not surprising to me that we're not seeing this, you know, overwhelming, you know, group of people who are just trying to, like, break down the border. That's just not the reality of this population. These are people who are finally seeing a light at the end of this long tunnel, this 3-year tunnel that they've been in. And if there's a way for them to do it, if they have to, you know, log onto this app and refresh it every day and hope that they finally might get their chance, well, they'll do that too. But I hope, you know, as someone who's seen this done well, and as we've all seen it done not well recently, that we can as a nation get back to a dignified and orderly system to process asylum seekers, because that's never going to go away, right, that we have asylum seekers at our border. So if we can just get back to our system for processing them, then we can get over this backlog situation that we're in and back into the new era.
But the backlog, very significant. If you're talking about, I think the Border Patrol said 10,000 encounters just over the weekend alone, 20,000 or more perhaps in detention. I mean, that's not sustainable, and that says to me that when you have overcrowding, you're going to have, you know, rights that are going to be diminished. You're going to have, you know, unhumanitarian conditions that are there as well. And I wonder, are you seeing that? I mean, the consequences of the, you know, overcrowding, what does that lead to in terms of what the nation can provide in terms of rights, and are people as concerned with this?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking the question, and I can say that the humanitarian needs of this population, or just the human needs, the shelter, the medical care, the food, et cetera, often don't come first. You know, there's law enforcement. We send down, you know, border enforcement. There's a lot of focus on that. But we've seen, as we did, you know, with the unaccompanied migrant kids in the spring of 2021, thousands of kids were just lost in the detention system at these processing centers because we didn't consider the needs of them and their families going into the policy change. My fear is that we're seeing that again. This plays out, you know, semi-regularly, and it's really unfortunate because we had advance warning. Plenty of advance warning of Title 42 being lifted, and I would expect and hope that as a nation we would hold our leaders accountable, not only to enforce our borders, but also to provide a dignified and humane way to process these people, these humans who are asking for our help.
Thank you for giving us what's happening from really the front lines in terms of immigration law as well. Texas immigration attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.